Hi, everyone. Welcome to week number 7. I thought I'd get this video posted as soon as possible because I am going out of town again in a couple of days. And I'll be gone throughout the weekend and the beginning of next week. As always, I'll have access to email as well as to the classroom. So I will be in contact, but just be out of town. So I thought getting this video together and up very quickly would be good for all of us. So we're now into week 7, so we're getting very close to the end of the class. I apologize for my voice. I've got a little bit of laryngitis today. But what you'll be doing for this week is, as you can see, you've got some reading to do, as always. We'll be looking at a couple of main topics this week. One topic we'll be looking at is human resource management in organizations. As you probably know from your organization, most organizations will spend about 85 to 90% of their operating budget on salaries and benefits for employees. And so human resource management really consumes a very large percentage of any organization's budget and will have a big impact upon what organizations do and how they behave on a daily basis. So we'll pull out that issue of human resource management, take a real close look at it this week, and look at how it affects our organizations and what they do daily. In addition to looking at human resource management this week, we will also take a look at organizational change and organizational development. And we'll talk about how organizations change over time. One of the themes that we will really focus on is that organizational change sometimes is intentional and is sometimes engineered into our organizations, while at other times organizational change is something that happens as a natural part of the maturation of an organization. That organizations go through a life cycle, and as they go through their life cycle, those organizations will experience a variety of different changes as they mature. So sometimes change comes from a deliberate engineering, sometimes it comes just more organically as part of the maturation of the organization. Now, when organizational change comes deliberately through an engineering process, oftentimes that's what we have talked about earlier in the course, which is engineering a culture. That a leader will come into an organization and will devote his or her political capital in order to try and change the vision and the culture and the norms of the organization. Now, in previous assignments, you've looked at your organization and you've told me about some of the norms and some of the practices and some of the rituals that really make your organization distinctive and unique. That's all part of the culture of the organization. So leaders can deliberately engineer that type of a culture. And that will then, with it, bring a lot of changes to what the organization does on a daily basis. But we also have to realize that a good portion of organizational change is not attributed to the actions of one particular leader, that organizations will change over time. And just like as Chris Argyris tells us, individuals go through a maturation and personal growth type of cycle, organizations go through their own maturation and growth cycle. And depending upon which author you read, different authors have different words that they use for these different phases in the life cycle of an organization. But typically in the early days of an organization, there's some type of a struggle for legitimacy. Some authors will refer to that as the entrepreneurial stage, where you'll see organizations try and make themselves legitimate in their environment, try and prove to the environment that they are a legitimate organization, that they have legitimate functions and duties that will add to the life of society and add to the life of the environment. And so what organizations do in these very first entrepreneurial types of phases is they will go out there and try and acquire resources, kind of like an open systems type of an approach. Through negative entropy, they'll pull in new resources, whether it be through money or political support or the labor pool that they are attracting. Bring these resources in to strengthen their organization, make their organization more legitimate. That's kind of this expansion, this entrepreneurial type of stage. As organizations age, they tend to move from that first entrepreneurial phase and they tend to move into a second phase. And that second phase is more of an elaboration type of phase. And in that type of phase, you'll see organizations getting creative, coming up with new ways of dealing with issues. You'll see organizations really start to place an emphasis on things like human resource management theory, systems theory, and try and find flexible ways to adapt to their environment. As they continue to age and continue to develop, you tend to move into more of what's called a formalization type of phase. And that's where they become very formal organizations. They develop policies and procedures and rules and regulations. And this is where organizations, according to Robert Merton, can run into the risk of bureaucratic dysfunction, in that as they start accumulating and developing all these policies and procedures, they start to view these policies and procedures as being the ultimate goals of the organization. And so the primary goal of the organization is no longer serving citizens and contributing to society, but rather the goal of the organization is to adhere to its policies and procedures. So this is where you get a lot of what we call institutional rigidity. And the organization will become very rigid. It will start to set up barriers between itself and its external environment. And this is where you end up getting a lot of distrust between organizations and individuals, citizens. You also end up getting a lot of resentment on the part of citizens, because you'll get this negative impression that, well, whenever I deal with the organization, they don't care about me. All they care about are their rules and procedures. They don't care about me as an individual. And so, like Charles Goodsell tells us, one of the problems with the bureaucracy is this negative impression that people have about the bureaucracy. And that negative impression is usually because they are dealing with a very formalized type of organization, one that has been around for a long time, one that has developed very much of this rigidity and this adherence to rules and policies and processes. Then as we see organizations move into their final stage, the final stage is oftentimes referred to different terms, but a lot of authors refer to it as the deceleration stage. This is as organizations start to decay. This is how they start to come apart. This is how they start to lose their energy out into the environment. And absent some negative entropy in open systems theory, this is how organizations eventually will either go out of existence or they will assume different functions and take on a different role within their environment. This type of organizational decay, this type of decline, is a natural part of the life cycle of an organization. The interesting thing to look at as students of organization theory is to understand how different organizations take different postures and different responses to this type of deceleration. In that sometimes you'll see organizations, when they're facing organizational decline, they'll be very resistant to that decline. Some will accept the decline and try and smooth it out and try and make it more gradual and try and make it a less painful type of process. So organizations all react differently to this period of organizational decline. So it's important this week for us to realize when we talk about organizational change, that change can come from a couple of different sources. It can be something engineered by leaders, which would be a new culture and developing and embedding new norms and values and rituals into the organization. Or it can just come organically through the life cycle of the organization. That older organizations that have been around longer tend to be more rigid, they tend to be more structured, less adaptive to changes than what you'll see with a newer, more entrepreneurial type of organization. So as you study your organization, I really would like for you to think about the changes that you have seen in your organization. Where do those changes come from? Were they something that were dictated by a leader or embedded by a leader in terms of creating a new culture? Was it done intentionally? Or are these changes more an artifact of just the aging and the development of the organization, becoming a more formalized type of organization? So those are the types of issues that we're going to deal with here in week 7. I would recommend I'll open up week 7 early so that you'll have access to the resources, but do take a look at the resources I have up on the screen. One of the things you'll be doing is there's this organizational Jeopardy round 1 and round 2 that you can kind of test your skills and test your knowledge with to help you prepare as we get to the end of the course. But the real big thing, obviously, is this critical assignment, the organizational analysis paper. We've made mention to it before, and I asked you a couple weeks ago to start thinking about it and working on it and thinking about what topic or concept you're going to use for it. This is the rubric for it, and so as you work on your organizational analysis paper to submit this week, I do recommend that you keep an eye on the rubric, and as long as you address the issues in the rubric, then I think you'll be fine. This is not a very long paper. Again, it's only 6 to 8 pages, and I would ask that you adhere to that page limit if you can. Try and keep it as parsimonious and concise as you can possibly keep it. So 6 to 8 page paper on a research analyzed concept within organizational behavior. And I know throughout your assignments up to this point in the class, you've talked about lots of different issues and concepts in your organization, whether it be retention or whatever it may be. Focusing on one of those issues, what I want to see you do is take that issue and connect it to the theories and the theorists that we have covered in the course. This is an applied learning type of assignment. So can you take this issue of relevance to your organization, and can you talk about it in terms of how it has been informed by a lot of the theories and theorists that we have covered up to this point in time? So I'll be looking obviously at the content. I'll be looking at critical thinking, your analytical skills as represented in the paper. Research, you will need to use some outside sources. Again, to get the maximum amount of points according to the rubric, you'll have to use a minimum of 6 scholarly sources. So, we're looking at primarily journal articles, and I think, based upon your topic, for most of the topics, I think that you'll have a wealth of journal articles out there that you can draw upon. So you will be using some of those scholarly journal articles. And then how well do you apply it to your organization using some examples to illustrate this issue in your organization, and then how this theory or how this theorist then contributes to our understanding of that issue. It is a critical assignment. As you know, in all the courses in the program, there's a critical assignment. This is the critical assignment. So you know how to submit that. You've done that before, and that's all available for you then in the Week 7 resources. So I think that's about it. So welcome to Week 7. We're almost at the, we are in the stretch run. We're almost at the end of the course. As always, any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or use the question answer form in the classroom to ask any questions you may have. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great Week 7, and I'll talk to you one last time in our welcome video for Week 8. All right, take care. Have a great week.